Hello, welcome to the first Primis Pod of 2026. Thanks for joining myself and my colleague Chris Cassidy.
Hi everyone.
For this super exciting session with our most recent Primis Lender of the Year, Barclays Bank. Over to you guys. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Hi Liz, great to be here today. My name's Victoria Thompson and I'm the Head of Strategic Partnerships for the Barclays Mortgage team. I've been in financial services about 20 years and about 10 of those at Barclays.
And I'm Russell Cross and I'm a National Account Manager. I have the pleasure of looking after Primis and TMA. I've been in Barclays actually 30 years this month.
Wow, congratulations.
Well, I'll kick us off. Victoria, question for you. I know we can never predict the future, but I am going to ask you to get your crystal ball out a little bit for us. And it's a new year, and I'm sure our audience will be keen to understand sort of what is your predictions for the economic environment this year. So would you mind just sharing your thoughts with us, please?
Sure. So I think my headline would be, I am cautiously optimistic. I know some people aren't feeling optimistic, but I am at the moment. And I think when we look at the growth forecasts, we know that we're expecting modest growth. I think the latest ones are about 1.2 to 1.4% growth. So it's not exciting, but it's not recessionary. So I'm taking that as a positive. We're also I am optimistically expecting inflation to continue to fall. CPI is looking at 2 to 2.5%. And that then gives us the chance for slightly lower cost on borrowing, slightly better rates. However, the geopolitical landscape does remain fraught. As we've seen recently, it's really hard to predict what will happen next. And that also then always feeds uncertainty. We also finished the end of last year with some of our highest unemployment rates in the UK since COVID. And all of that together then just feeds that uncertainty and desire to invest. All of that said, I still remaining quite cautiously optimistic, and I think we should be looking at steady growth in 2026.
That's good to hear. It's certainly an agile market, and there are several things that need to be considered really as time goes on. Really? How do you think this might affect the pricing as we go through 2026, Russ?
I think, as Victoria said, the strapline is being cautiously optimistic. When it comes to the housing market and pricing, I think if we cast our mind back to Q4 and obviously the run up to the budget, I think a lot of people are sitting on their hands. So you get a lot of customers were thinking, okay, we'll wait to see what happens. And as we know, within that budget, there wasn't a lot that was groundbreaking that affected the housing, the mortgage market anyway, which is a good thing because it brings certainty. And I think that's what customers need. When it comes to the certainty piece, the unknowns, people were worried about hence sitting on their hands. So I think what we will see when it comes to 2026 is we will see people, when they're removing the unknown, they'll be more confident and be able to make those decisions because there's no grey matter. They know exactly where they stand, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing for them, so they can prepare. And I think when it comes to pricing, again, I'm quite optimistic that we'll see at least one or two base rate cuts. I'd love to see it start with just a 3 and nothing else behind it. But that's being probably more on the optimistic side. But whatever happens, lenders, Barclays and other lenders included, just need to make sure that we're on the mark and that we're making sure that brokers, customers are informed, they've got time, and that we're being as clear with our communication as we can.
There was a lot of uncertainty towards the end of last year. I fully agree with that, and that's consistent feedback that I'm sure Liz and I both heard towards the end of the year. There has been a lot of noise in the press recently about AI. There continues to be a lot of noise about it. What are your views on how AI is going to affect the financial services industry?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the big question at the moment. And I think the joy of it is not many of us are experts. And I'm definitely not an AI expert, but I'm really keen to know more. I'm super curious about it. And I think it's inevitable. It's going to have a big impact on our industry. So therefore, the more we can know, learn and influence, the better. I think it could represent one of the biggest productivity shifts we've seen in decades. So therefore, it provides a really great opportunity for our brokers, for our businesses, but it's understanding how. And I don't think it's about machines making decisions for us, but I think it's about how it harnesses that information and helps us make better and smarter decisions. So we've all got to figure out then what's the benefit to our businesses and how we can apply it to our own circumstances. And I think there's a lot of talk about AI coming. Well, it's already here in many cases and we're already using it. So I'll give a couple of examples that financial services are using it, which we know about. So things like fraud detection. The way that AI can look at more behavioural based rather than static data can really help drive down some of those, some of the fraud rates. So that could be a huge benefit across. We all know about customer services, the AI bots that are improving as time goes on. And, you know, being able to answer simple queries overnight 24/7, that enables our colleagues to be able to deal with more complex situations and be able to kind of get involved in more of that work. And also the other big one for our industry, of course, is the lending decisions. The machines are able to analyse huge amounts of data and help make smarter and quicker lending decisions. So there's some of the three of the ways that we're already starting to use it. But I guess for us, it's that responsibility of learning for ourselves how it can impact our business. The other one also that I think we tend to forget about is the data sharing. So I think we talk a lot about AI, but actually some of the basics around being better at sharing data across the industry is so important. And I know we all talk about the land registry as being a key one. How can we crack that? And I think being able to share data across the industry will be key to improving broker experience and our customer experience. I guess the final one on AI, which is the elephant in the room, is AI equals job losses. And I mean, it's inevitable that some types of jobs may fall, but I think it's more about jobs changing and taking away some of that kind of more admin-based work to free people up to think more on the strategy side and the relationship side, which for our broker community could be a really powerful tool to help their businesses be more effective.
I think just to kind of add to what Victoria has said there is, I think especially during 2025, there's that nervousness around AI, what it can do, what we should be doing with it. And I think if you look at lenders, you look at brokers, you look at the government, and there is that, you know, open sharing of data, there is that nervousness that's there. When it can be fully embraced and you look at, you know, the margins in terms of the cost save, the money it can save, time save, it's certainly something that can only help and improve a business, but adopted in the right way.
Yeah, and I think it can feel quite overwhelming because there's lots of information. And as I mentioned at the start, not many of us are actually experts at it at the moment. So the approach I've taken is to be curious and to start small. One of the examples a colleague shared with me earlier in the week, which I thought was brilliant, was around taking responsibilities for our own business and thinking about the simple stuff. So are our websites set up for chatbots to be able to read from? So the new generation don't sit there and say, I know I'm going to go to every single broker's website or every single lender's and look for the best rate. They go onto a search engine and that search engine sweeps. Are our websites able to respond to that? So it's those small basic things that we can all start thinking about and how that could positively impact our businesses.
That's a really interesting point, actually, because personally, I did that last night. I looked at what the rates were because our fixed rate is coming to an end at the end of the year, and to get a gauge of where things are going, it would never have occurred to me to dial back and think, are all the lenders' websites able to transport that data into AI? So that's just something I hadn't even thought about. I think there's so many different things that AI bring that are positive, but how do we ensure really that everything's used ethically and that, you know, AI doesn't recognise vulnerability and things like that? And a concern is always that it can be used unethically to, you know, fraudulently or whichever. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that's something that, as I say, is probably front of centre of a lot of people's minds, especially us as a lender, is, you know, it almost needs to be a set of rules. And I think at the moment in the UK, there isn't a set of rules for AI. I think in August of this year, if a business is transacting in Europe, there's going to be an AI Act, which, you know, you have to abide by a set of rules, and that's where there needs to be some clear guidelines, I think, and that's where, going back to what the previous question around the nervousness, because it's almost like the ostrich putting the head in the sand. You may get some brokers and some businesses out there that think, oh, okay, it's going to come, and how do you embrace it? And whether people like it or not, a set of rules or a set of guidelines bring comfort, and it will probably mean that people will be more susceptible to adapt to change. So that's kind of where we're at. And certainly from us as a lender, you we're not going to just say, oh, AI, let's do it. There needs to be some guidelines and some rules and some human checking, because as you probably know, when you do your searches and you go onto Google and it gives you the AI commentary, you might think, oh, I'm going to stick that in my next report, but you've got to check it. So there needs to be some sort of human checking AI's homework, shall we say?
Absolutely, and also, as I remind people often, AI responds to the question you ask it. If you don't ask the right question, you get the wrong data back, don't you?
And kids nowadays, when they're revising for their homework, they're probably using AI. They've got to be careful what they do, but it's how you ask that question. It's only as good as what you plumb in.
It is. It absolutely is. So we know AI is fast advancing, and we also know that throughout 2024, 2025, and hopefully you're going to tell me now that things are going to continue to change. There have been so many changes. At Barclays, you've enhanced your criteria, you've made changes to your new build, you've made changes to your income multiples, and that's all without me talking about the new system at all. What's next? What's next for Barclays? What's coming down the line for us?
Good question. Well, I think as you quite rightly said, 2025 has probably been a year of change for the intermediary market for Barclays. And I mean, the biggest thing that we did was we launched a new system. And I can only see that through 2026 we're going to innovate that even more. Proud thing about the system itself is that we use brokers along the way, and I think we're going to continue to do that, aren't we?
Definitely.
Yeah.
They help design and shape the system.
Yeah. So, and that, I think what we have been guilty of, as other lenders may have in the past, is doing what we feel is best for brokers without getting a broker's input. And that's why with the system itself, we designed the system from the notepad right through to what we see now with a broker's input. Around, even when it came to things like what the system looks like, what it feels like, what the responses it throws out, that all had broker input within there. So, and I think from the policy point of view, if we look back to 2025, you mentioned new build. So yes, we've made enhancements around the new build journey. We can now do up to 95% on houses up to £600,000. Biggest things we probably looked at is affordability, because we know it's a struggle for people to get onto the property market. And those are the things that we're focusing on when it came to income multiples up to 6 times, and also dynamic stress rate, so that we can look at affordability in a different way. So essentially try to lend people more responsibly, and get more people on the property ladder. And I think during 2026, for this year, we were going to only innovate more, and we want to use the broker, use our partners' feedback to look at where we go from here. There'll be more innovations around policy. Affordability is going to be high on the agenda. I mean, the remortgage space is going to be huge this year. Retention. You've only got to look at some of the figures. I think 25% up on the market opportunity for H1. So remortgage is definitely going to be on our agenda. We want to improve that journey. We want to be competitive, and I think we'll be really competitive on price this year, to help more and more people on the property ladder.
And I think the only thing I'd add is the good part is, because mortgages is such a key part of Barclays' strategy, we've got the investment behind it. And we've seen that in the last few years with things like building our own in-house system and all the changes we've made, but that will continue. And the great thing about building a system that is in-house, we can make changes really quickly. So working with the brokers, so please keep your feedback coming. The more feedback we get, the more real-time changes we can make. So I think we're all feeling really positive about that for this year.
It's really nice to hear a lender of your scale and size sort of acknowledging the hand that feeds you and saying, we need that feedback. We need you to sort of tell us what we're doing to make life easier. And, a mantra I'm sure you try and operate is be easy to work with. And those changes have certainly helped you do that. So really insightful stuff. And it's nice to hear us talk about some of those sort of external influences and what we foresee the market to be. But on a personal level, what would you like to see happen on the industry this year?
Yeah, so I think 2 things for me. I'd love to see more innovation and continuing to push on innovation and make it an even more exciting place. There's lots changing and we want to kind of be at the front of it. I would also love it if we can find a way as an industry to solve the problem around how do we get first-time buyers who don't have the bank of mum and dad onto the property ladder. And that's something as a bank we're really looking at and hoping to be able to address that problem in 2026.
I think for me, first-time buyers, and I think I mentioned before that we need to get more people on the property ladder. I think it starts earlier than that, and I know from my point of view, I've mentioned kids, and I've got 3 boys. I think the education around the financial industry, around finances in general, needs to start earlier. I know the government have proposed that in schools, we will see finance being added to the curriculum, but I don't think that's until at least 2028. If I look at my kids now, and I talk to them about finance, talk to them about money, they haven't really got the first clue. And then obviously that's on us as parents, but I think there needs to be more in terms of the schooling. But also as an industry, I think that it's on lenders, on brokers to kind of educate the young people. At Barclays, we go into schools and we talk about finance, but that might be around opening a savings account, opening a current account, and we do talk about mortgages. But I find when you ask the kids, what is a mortgage, how does it work, not saying they don't have a clue, but they don't really know the mechanics around it, and they're the brokers' customers of the future. So I think that's where we need to start. And I think there's some stat that I read that 39% of young adults, not just kids, young adults, don't feel comfortable managing their own money. So that's where I would like to see more innovation at a younger age, and kids coming out of school, coming out of their, into their first job, having a bit of a plan. I want to buy a property. This is what I need to do. So that's what I'd like to see.
So before we wrap up, is there any final thoughts from you, Russ?
Chris, no, not necessarily. More so really just to say thank you very much to the Primis members for all the support for 2025, and really looking forward to working with them all in 2026.